the truth be known to all of them. I'm not some big star. I'm just me. Me to give everything I possibly can. I will leave no stone unturned and no song unsung. I'm not.
Neil Diamond was a music god. Now his hands shake so badly he can't play guitar. At 77, doctors gave him the terrible news about his health. For 2 whole years he couldn't even admit he was sick. Then he cancelled everything overnight. After selling 125 million albums, the man behind Sweet Caroline now sits alone in his studio. His sad new life is nothing like his glory days. Neil Diamond was born on January 24, 1941 in Brooklyn, New York during the tough years of World War II. His parents, Rose and Akabaki Diamond, came from Jewish families who had fled hardship in Russia and Poland. Life wasn't easy. His father worked as a dry goods merchant, trying to keep the family afloat through uncertain times. They moved often across Brooklyn, and everywhere they went, the echoes of their immigrant roots and Jewish traditions followed. Neil grew up with a deep sense of working-class struggle, something that would later find its way into the heart of his music. For a few years during the war, the family's world changed completely. They moved out to Cheyenne, Wyoming, while Kev served in the army. For a Brooklyn kid, the wide open spaces of Wyoming were like another planet. It was there, sitting in dark movie theaters watching singing cowboy films, that Neil fell in love with music and storytelling. The huge skies, the rugged heroes, the idea that songs could capture a feeling, all of it stuck with him. When the war ended, the Diamonds packed up and headed back to Brooklyn, this time settling in Brighton Beach. Neil carried the wildness of the West inside him, even as he returned to the crowded streets of New York. In his teenage years, Neil discovered something that would change his life forever: writing songs. Around 15 years old, he wrote his first song, Hear Them Bells, for a girl he liked. It wasn't just a schoolboy crush. It opened up a whole new world inside him. That same summer at a camp for Jewish kids upstate, he got the chance to see Pete Seeger perform. Watching Seeger, seeing someone turn simple words and melodies into something powerful, hit Neil like a lightning bolt. When he got back home, he begged for a guitar. And before long, his fingers were clumsily learning chords, his mind already racing ahead to songs he hadn't written yet. His 16th birthday gift, a cheap $9 acoustic guitar, might have looked ordinary, but for Neil it was everything. School started to slip away from him as he spent more and more time hunched over the guitar, writing melodies, scribbling lyrics in the margins of his notebooks. Even when he tried to focus on his studies, the songs kept pushing their way into his mind. That guitar became a part of him, the first real sign that maybe he wasn't meant to follow the normal path. At Erasmus Hall High School, he joined the chorus, singing alongside a girl named Barbra Streisand. Either of them were stars yet. They were just 2 kids trying to figure it out. They weren't close, but they both carried a spark that the world hadn't seen yet. Later, Neil transferred to Abraham Lincoln High School, where he picked up fencing and made friends with Herb Cohen, who would go on to be an Olympic fencer. It was an odd mix, music and fencing. But somehow both taught him about focus, discipline, and dreaming bigger than Brooklyn. In 1958, Neil earned a fencing scholarship to New York University. Instead of chasing music, he started out studying to be a doctor, chasing the American dream his parents hoped for. But even as he sat through biology lectures, his mind wandered. Song ideas crowded out anatomy diagrams. By his second year, he was skipping classes to sneak off to Tin Pan Alley, hoping to catch a break as a songwriter. His grades slid, but his dreams only grew stronger. The real turning point came in 1961. Just 10 credits shy of a degree, Neil was offered a small songwriting contract, $50 a week. It wasn't much, but it was enough for him to make the biggest gamble of his life. He dropped out of college, walking away from a secure future to chase a crazy, uncertain dream. His parents were heartbroken, especially his father, who couldn't understand why his son would throw everything away. It would take years and a lot of hits before that wound started to heal. At Sunbeam Music Publishing, Neil learned that the business side of songwriting wasn't exactly romantic. He was crammed into a tiny room, expected to churn out catchy tunes for artists he didn't even know. Every time he tried to write something personal, something real, it got rejected for being too complicated. Day after day, he felt his spirit shrinking. When Sunbeam finally let him go, Neil felt crushed, but also strangely free. He realized he would have to do it his own way or not at all. Neil Diamond's start in the music business was full of hope but also a lot of heartbreak. In 1962, he tried teaming up with his friend Jack Packer. They called themselves Neil and Jack and released a couple of songs, but nothing took off. Later that year, Neil got a solo contract with Columbia Records. It felt like a big break. In July 1963, he released a single called Clown Town with At Night on the Other Side. Music magazines gave it good reviews, but it didn't sell. It didn't even come close to hitting the charts. Columbia didn't waste any time. They dropped him without a second thought. That's when the hard years began. Neil was broke, barely surviving. Some days he only had 35 cents to spend on food, just enough for a little something to eat. He wrote songs anywhere he could, on buses, in empty rooms, and even on an old piano he found above a New York City club called Birdland. It was a lonely and painful time. But somehow the songs started to get better. Without pressure, he found his voice. Later, he said that it was during this time that he wrote songs with something real inside them. Songs like Cherry Cherry and Solitary Man were born out of that struggle. In November 1965, things finally started to change. A group called Jay and the Americans recorded one of his songs, Sunday in Me. For the first time, Neil had a real hit on his hands. It reached number 18 on the Billboard charts, and stayed there for weeks. It even became a hit in Canada. After so many years of being told no, this little victory meant everything. It showed the world that Neil wasn't just another songwriter lost in the crowd. His melodies had heart. His songs had hooks you couldn't forget. Sunday in Me opened doors that had always been slammed in his face. Not long after, Neil met two people who would change everything for him, Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich. They were big names already, behind a bunch of famous songs. They loved Neil's demos and quickly got him a deal with the music publisher. But just like before, the good luck didn't last long. He got fired. Neil joked later that getting fired was almost a rite of passage for young songwriters. Even though it stung, it didn't stop him. Jeff and Ellie introduced him to Bert Burns, who ran Bang Records. Burns saw something special in Neil and signed him. For the first time, Neil had a team that believed in him. They gave him the freedom to make the kind of music he wanted. The dark, emotional songs that had been building inside him finally had a place to grow. Then came the moment that truly exploded his career. In 1966, a music publisher named Don Kirshner called Neil into his office. He needed a song for a new band called the Monkees. Neil played him a tune he had written for himself called I'm a Believer. Kirshner knew right away it was a hit. They quickly recorded the music, sent it to California, and the Monkees added their vocals. When the song came out, it was like a bomb going off. I'm a Believer sold over 1 million copies before it even hit stores. It raced to number 1 and stayed there for 7 weeks straight. It became the biggest song of 1967. Suddenly Neil Diamond wasn't just some struggling songwriter anymore. He was the guy who wrote the biggest song in America. He also wrote other songs for the Monkees like A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You and Look Out, Here Comes Tomorrow, which made his name even bigger. While all of this was happening, Neil didn't forget about his own dreams. In early 1966, he released Solitary Man. It didn't shoot to number 1, but it was enough to put him on the map as a solo artist. The song was about loneliness and trying to find love, something he knew a lot about after all those rough years. Even though he didn't realize it at first, it was a reflection of his own life. It was raw, honest, and unforgettable. A few months later, he released Cherry Cherry. And that one really took off. It climbed all the way to number 6 on the charts. Now Neil Diamond wasn't just writing hits for other people, he was becoming a star himself. Around this time, he also rushed out his first album, The Feel of Neil Diamond. Even though it was put together quickly to ride the wave of his success, it showed everyone that he was the real deal. His songs were personal, catchy, and full of heart, the kind of music that would define his whole career. In 1969, everything changed when he stepped onto the stage of The Ed Sullivan Show. That night, millions of Americans saw Neil Diamond for the first time. He sat on a simple stool and sang Sweet Caroline, pulling the audience into his world with nothing but his voice and the story in his song. When he came back for his second performance, the stage was transformed. He sang Holly Holy while standing on a giant rainbow-colored pyramid surrounded by dancing flower children. It was a perfect snapshot of the late 60s, bold, colorful, and a little wild. Sweet Caroline rocketed up the charts and became a classic. Holly Holy charted too, though not as high. Despite how powerful the performance was, it would be his only time on The Sullivan Show, maybe because the show itself was nearing its end. The story behind Sweet Caroline stayed a secret for almost 40 years. In 2007, Diamond finally revealed that he wrote the song after seeing a photo of a young Caroline Kennedy dressed in her riding gear beside her pony. At the time, he was a broke, unknown songwriter, but that innocent image gave him hope and a spark of inspiration. He later wrote the song in less than an hour while staying in a Memphis hotel room. When he told the story years later at Caroline Kennedy's 50th birthday party, it made the song even more special. Over time, Sweet Caroline took on a second life as the Boston Red Sox adopted it as their unofficial anthem, playing it at every home game. Even decades later, Diamond was amazed by how the song kept finding new generations of fans. By 1968, Neil Diamond had signed with Uni Records, and it changed everything. At Columbia, his early songs had been praised but didn't sell. Now with Uni, he had the freedom and the support he needed. His first gold records came during this time, and for the first time he was seen not just as a songwriter but as a true performer. It was also during these years that he helped launch another rising star. When a young British singer named Elton John came to America, it was Neil Diamond who introduced him to his first big American audience. Meanwhile, Diamond's own songs were growing deeper and more personal, and his concerts were becoming grand productions that showed just how powerful he could be on stage. In 1970, Neil Diamond hit the top of the charts for the first time with Cracklin' Rosie. It was the payoff for all the years of writing songs in empty rooms and traveling by bus. After surviving on barely enough to eat and pouring his heart into songs like Solitary Man, Diamond had finally cracked the code. Cracklin' Rosie was everything he had been working toward: a catchy melody, emotional lyrics, and a sound that stuck in people's heads. After that hit, there was no doubt he wasn't just a songwriter anymore, he was a star. The momentum only grew. In 1972, Song Sung Blue became another #1 hit, and it captured the simple, heartfelt style that Diamond had perfected. That summer, he recorded one of the most important albums of his career, Hot August Night, during a run of 10 sold-out shows at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. The double live album showed Diamond at his absolute best. The energy, the emotion, the connection with the audience, it was all there. Hot August Night wasn't just a concert album. It was the moment Neil Diamond became a legend. He would return to that night again and again, releasing sequels in 1987, 2009, and 2018. But nothing quite matched the magic of that original show. Later that same year, Diamond took an even bigger risk. He became the first major pop rock star since Al Jolson to headline Broadway's Winter Garden Theater. For 20 straight nights, he sold out the house, drawing crowds that included young couples, old ladies, businessmen, and even hipsters who secretly loved his music. It was a gamble, but it paid off in a huge way, proving that Neil Diamond could win over any audience, anywhere. Then, at the peak of his fame, Diamond made a surprising move. He walked away from touring for more than 3 years. While other artists worried about being forgotten, Diamond stayed home with his family, wrote songs, and recharged. When he finally returned to the stage in late 1976, some wondered if the world still cared, but they did. And more than ever. His comeback tour shattered attendance records across North America, Australia, and Europe, pulling in over $5 million, an enormous sum at the time. His shows were bigger, his songs were deeper, and his connection with audiences was stronger than ever. Even bigger things were waiting. In 1973, Neil Diamond signed a deal with Columbia Records that shook the music industry. They offered him $5 million for 5 albums, an unbelievable amount back then. With that freedom, Diamond chose to take a creative risk. He wrote the soundtrack for the movie adaptation of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a philosophical story about a seagull who dreamed of flying higher and faster than any other. Diamond's soundtrack was full of rich, emotional music, a major departure from his pop hits. The film itself was a flop, but Diamond's music soared. The soundtrack earned millions, won a Grammy, and even brought him a Golden Globe. Behind the scenes, though, things weren't so smooth. Diamond clashed with the movie's director, furious that his music was being edited without his approval. After that experience, he vowed never to work on a film again unless he had full creative control, a promise he kept until 1980, when he starred in The Jazz Singer. In 1980, Neil Diamond decided to try something new. He had never acted before, but he took the lead role in The Jazz Singer, a modern remake of a famous 1927 film. Even without any acting experience, Hollywood paid him an unbelievable $3.5 million, making him the highest-paid first-time actor ever. That time he played Yusel Rabinovich, a Jewish cantor who dreamed of leaving tradition behind to become a pop star. Acting next to legends like Sir Laurence Olivier and Lucille Ball's daughter Lucie Arnaz, Diamond surprised many by creating strong chemistry on screen. The movie made a lot of money, earning 3 times what it cost to make, but critics didn't like Diamond's acting at all. Still, the soundtrack turned into a huge success. Songs like Love on the Rocks, Hello Again, and America became instant classics. There was even a controversial scene where Diamond performed in blackface as a modern nod to the original film's history. After the experience, Diamond decided he would rather stay a singer than chase a second career in movies. Aside from small appearances as himself, like in Saving Silverman years later, he left acting behind for good. One of the biggest songs from the Jazz Singer soundtrack was America. It wasn't just a hit, it became a symbol inspired by his own family's immigrant story. Diamond wrote it straight from the heart without thinking too much. His grandparents had come from Russia and Poland, settling in Brooklyn where he grew up. "It's my gift to them," he once said. The song had a sadness hidden inside its hope, and people could feel it. It hit number 8 on the Billboard charts, and stayed close to American culture for years. In the 2000s, it became an anthem for Latino immigration rights rallies, something Diamond never expected but loved. He said, "It's the song for the modern-day Latino too," proud that it reached across generations and cultures. Long before all that fame, Neil Diamond had already started his personal journey. When he was 22 and working as a waiter in the Catskills to support his music dreams, he met a young girl named Jay Posner. Their connection was instant. They married in 1963 before the world even knew his name. While he struggled to break into music, Jay worked as a school teacher, and together they had 2 daughters, Marjorie and Elin. But as his music career exploded in the late 60s, the marriage couldn't survive the pressure. By 1967 they had separated, and by 1969 it was officially over. It was a bittersweet time. He was becoming a star but losing his family at the same time. Later that same year, Neil married Marcia Murphy, a TV production assistant. Some rumors said their relationship had started even before his first marriage ended. They built a life together and had 2 sons, Jesse and Micah. For a while, it seemed like he had found stability. But again, the heavy demands of touring and late-night work took their toll. After 25 years, they divorced in 1995. The media went wild when reports said Marcia received about $150 million in the settlement, half of Neil's fortune. He later said the number was a bit exaggerated, but he didn't argue much. "She got enough to live on for the rest of her life," he said, and even added that she was worth every penny. Instead of therapy, Diamond poured his emotions into music, creating the album Tennessee Moon to heal himself. A few years later, something unexpected happened. While touring Australia in 1996, Diamond met Ray Farley in Brisbane. They fell into a deep, quiet relationship that lasted 12 years. Ray even took over managing his merchandising business. Their bond was tested hardest when Ray suffered a failed back surgery and terrible pain. Diamond stayed by her side constantly, writing the songs for Home Before Dark during that tough year. The love and sadness of that time bled into the music. But even after all they had been through, their relationship quietly ended before 2008 with no public explanation. Love found him again when he least expected it. In 2009, while filming a concert documentary, Neil met Katie McNeil, a much younger music executive. Their age gap was big, almost 30 years, but it didn't matter to them. In 2011, at 70 years old, Diamond used his very first tweet to announce their engagement. They married in 2012 in a small Los Angeles ceremony. Neil, looking back at all his failed marriages, said he didn't want to end his life alone. This time he had found someone who truly understood the journey with him. Katie would later become his manager too, standing by him through his 2018 Parkinson's diagnosis, which forced him to retire from touring after 50 incredible years on the road. Even as he was dealing with personal changes, Neil's career took a sharp and powerful turn. In 2005, he teamed up with famous producer Rick Rubin and released 12 songs. The album marked a full-circle return to his raw, emotional style, and it shocked everyone by debuting at number 4 on the Billboard charts. Rubin pushed Neil to slow down, play his guitar again, and strip back the fancy production. Some of the sessions even captured the last performances of the legendary Billy Preston. The project didn't just sell well, it changed the way Diamond performed live too, bringing back the fire of his early days. Another unexpected twist in Diamond's career came from a song he had written long before. His track Red Red Wine exploded globally thanks to UB40's reggae version. Funny enough, the band didn't even know it was a Neil Diamond song, they thought. And Diamond was a Jamaican artist. Their version became a massive hit in the UK in 1983 and even bigger in the United States 5 years later when it reached number 1. Diamond loved it so much that he started performing their reggae version at his own concerts, embracing the new life they had given his old song. Neil Diamond's music kept finding new audiences in surprising ways. Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction featured Urge Overkill's dark and moody version of Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, turning the old tune into a haunting new classic. Deep Purple turned Kentucky Woman into a roaring rock song. Johnny Cash gave Solitary Man a raw country soul. In 2009, stars like Adele, Coldplay, and Foo Fighters paid tribute to Diamond's influence, showing just how many genres his songs could fit. The industry also recognized his greatness. Diamond was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1984 and later the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011. Selling over 125 million albums worldwide was a huge achievement. But even bigger was the emotional connection he had with fans across generations. He wasn't just a star. He became part of people's lives. In January 2018, just a few days before his 77th birthday, Neil Diamond made a heartbreaking announcement. He told the world he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and had to retire from touring. The news came out of nowhere. He was right in the middle of his 50th anniversary tour with big shows planned in Australia and New Zealand. But Parkinson's, with its tremors and balance problems, made it impossible for him to keep performing the way he wanted. In his message to fans, he said he was deeply disappointed but promised he would keep writing and recording songs. It was the end of 5 decades of live performances that had brought joy to millions. He ended his farewell with a line from his biggest hit, thanking his fans. "This ride has been so good, so good, so good. Thanks to you." The music world was stunned. Even at his age, Neil was still giving powerful shows that made people forget how old he was. But stepping away from the stage wasn't easy for him. At first, Neil didn't even want to believe he was sick. In a 2023 interview, He admitted he stayed in denial for almost 2 years. When the doctor told him about the diagnosis, Neil simply said, "I'll see you whenever you want to see me, but I have work to do." He pushed it aside, focusing on making music in his Los Angeles studio, surrounded by trophies from a lifetime of success. Yet inside, a storm was brewing. It wasn't until 5 years later that something inside him shifted. By April 2023, Neil said he finally felt a strange calm. "Things have gotten very quiet," he shared. "I find that I like myself better. I'm easier on people. I'm easier on myself." It took years of struggle before he could find that kind of peace. While Neil was fighting his private battles, something unexpected helped him heal. In December 2022, a Broadway show about his life called A Beautiful Noise opened in New York. It wasn't just a simple musical. It showed his real struggles, loneliness, heartbreak, depression, and it didn't sugarcoat anything. The show was framed as therapy sessions, with songs sparking memories from his past. Watching it was hard for Neil. He admitted he felt embarrassed, flattered, and scared all at once. When asked what scared him the most, he answered with deep honesty, "Being found out is the scariest thing because we all wear a facade. And the truth is, I'm not some big star. I'm just me." Even though he had stepped away from touring, Neil still found ways to surprise his fans. On the night A Beautiful Noise opened, he showed up without warning. From the balcony, he led the crowd in singing Sweet Caroline, and the theater shook with joy. It was his first performance in New York since 2017, and people could hardly believe their eyes. That wasn't the only time he came back to sing. In 2022, he appeared at a Red Sox game in Boston and sang Sweet Caroline again, thrilling baseball fans who had made the song their anthem. Earlier, he had sung at a charity event in Las Vegas, and even during the early days of the pandemic, he created a special handwashing version of Sweet Caroline to lift people's spirits.